Welcome to a special edition of an off-season Mets report with your Mets beat reporters Sam Davis and Dylan Balsamo.
Pleasure to be with you folks as always. Buck Showalter, as you may have heard, has been named the 24th manager in New York Mets history after signing a 3-year contract last week.
Dylan, as a Mets fan, I'm sure you were a little bit anxious during this managerial process and search for the New York Mets. It was the culmination of months of expectation. It was accelerated, of course, during the lockdown as well. Buck Showalter was one of 3 finalists. He always seemed to be the favorite for this job, though. And here is Buck in his opening remarks, as the next Mets manager.
Hey, thanks to everybody. It's a great honor to be here today with Angela, and just a heartfelt thank you to Steve and Sandy, and of course Billy and Alex too. Everybody. The Mets are very precious to them. The fans, they're precious to me. The things, it's a great charge to keep that we have ahead of us, and I just want everybody to know that it's going to be a priority, from day one, to put a product out there that everybody can be proud of. There's going to be people when we're on the West Coast staying up till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning to see how the Mets did or do. And I just want everybody to embrace that responsibility, and very excited about the potential for things this season and beyond. And, just about, Steve continues to eliminate excuses that we might have for things we can't do. I'm very excited about the analytical department and the things that they're going to bring for us to give us hopefully an advantage. And all the Billy and I and Sandy are starting to put together the coaching staff. Will take our time, and it's just it's got the potential to continue to be the great place that it is and was. Not a lot of lip service. It's kind of a show me situation, and I just want everybody to know that the Mets are going to be something that's very precious to the people that we bring in, and it's a great responsibility that I and we will take very seriously every day. And there's ebbs and flows to the season, but the consistency of how we go about our business and the people we surround ourselves with and how we treat our each other is going to be special. And I've missed being part of a team more than anything, and I'm looking forward to being a part of the Mets team. I'm very honored here today.
Buck Showalter has 20 years of managerial experience in Major League Baseball, managing the Yankees, the Diamondbacks, the Rangers, and the Orioles over his career. Has been named AL Manager of the Year 3 times. He's made 5 playoff appearances, including an ALCS back with the Orioles. But the one thing he's missing is a World Series appearance, something he's talked about as the main goal as the new manager of the New York Mets.
I understand the job description. The job description here isn't to be competitive or try to win 80 more games than you lose. It's to be the last team standing, and that's the focus. How do we get better every day?
Buck landed his first managerial job in 1992. He's had to evolve along with the game of baseball over his career. At the peak of that evolution, of course, is analytics, which Showalter also spoke about using in today's game.
All the information out there. I'll just say this, David. If somebody thinks that I'm going to go back to the hotel or the house and think that maybe we got beat because someone else had better or used information better than we did, or analytics, whatever you want to call it, you don't know me very well. Okay. I've always been very spongeful with information to a fault. And just like everybody else, I don't have a corner on it. There's a lot of smart people in this game, but if you think that I'm going to let somebody beat us by having better analytical information, or because someone on the staff doesn't understand it, then I'm not going to talk about it. We'll show you.
Well, Sam, it has been a very interesting winter so far for the Mets, lockout aside. Just curious, for you, what are your initial thoughts on this hiring, on this press conference, what Buck Showalter had to say?
Well, first of all, from the hiring, looking at that, as soon as I saw the news, as soon as I saw his name as a finalist, I said, that is the guy. I really thought that, he is the perfect fit for this role. And the biggest thing for me is the experience he brings to the table. We said a little bit earlier, no, he hasn't won a World Series. No, he hasn't been to a World Series, but his large amount of experience with number of different teams, dealing with players in the clubhouse, to me, that experience is really important for this group because we know the talent's there. We know the talent has gotten a lot better this offseason, especially obviously with the additions that Steve Cohen and Billy Epler have made. But you need somebody to be that experienced leader at the top. He just seemed like the perfect guy. And also in the press conference, Dylan, I know you were there as well. He struck me really as the perfect fit and the perfect role for this Mets managerial job.
You know what really stuck out to me, Sam, and this is something that you and I have discussed since the managerial campaign for the Mets started during this offseason is the mix of the old school and the new school. And this is something you kind of alluded to. And it's something that Buck Showalter seemed like he really wanted to emphasize in this clubhouse, something that I think surprised a lot of people was a guy of his stature and of, quite frankly, his age, being able to sit there and say, I don't want to squash any personalities in the clubhouse. This is, I don't want everybody being the same. Even at one point, I'm sure you noticed this alluded to the different music that
yes,
he
I love
familiarizes
that.
himself with.
He's humming along to the, the players are surprised with what he's listening to. I love that. That's awesome.
Oh, it was very delightful. So, and Sam, I think you'll agree with me in saying, there's been issues with the Mets in the last couple of years being able to make that connection of winning games specifically in, late August, early September, but it never seemed like a lack of talent. It just kind of seemed like an inability to put things together, mostly because of one, I guess, a lack of experience in that situation, but also just the right kind of motivator to get all of these energies together to form one cohesive piece.
Yeah, and I think, Dylan, both you and I also, we like Luis Rojas, of course, and we thought, he did a great job with what he had in his first season, obviously, but they needed a different kind of leader. Nothing against him, but they needed someone like a Buck Showalter, I really do think, that has that experience, that is willing also to work with players of all ages. He's not stuck in, the ways of the past. He understands analytics, and he wants to incorporate that as much as he can. He wants to relate to the newer players, the younger players, as well as the older veterans, which the Mets certainly have a balance of in this clubhouse. Another thing that struck me too is, the Mets' new GM hire, Billy Epler. His relationship with Buck Showalter seems to be really positive. They had this like natural kind of chemistry, in that press conference, and I think that's really important as well, because Buck made an emphasis that there will be challenges with this group, but they are going to be solely on the field. They're not going to be any sort of distractions off the field, because we know how big the New York media can make distractions out to be. We just saw it last year with the rat raccoon, and you could go all the way down the list, the thumbs down. So many issues that this Mets group in the past had off the field. To me, I'm also very encouraged that those things won't be happening under Buck Showalter, because he runs, a class act, and he seems to have a great relationship with Billy Epler as well.
You would never think that someone of Luis Rojas's calmness would be the one to oversee the rat and raccoon madness or the thumbs down mania. And while we're sitting here, credit to Luis Rojas for managing the ship in two really tough seasons for the New York Mets for one reason or another. But, it is very interesting when you talk about chemistry. Obviously, as you mentioned, there seemed to be something natural there between Buck Showalter and Billy Epler. And something Sandy Alderson, president of the organization, mentioned is that he tried to hire Buck Showalter as manager of the Oakland A's when he was there, some odd years ago. But nevertheless, this is the combination that we're getting. So I'm curious for your opinion, Sam, here is, this is a Mets team that for a lot of July into early August last year was leading the National League East, and then things fell apart. A lot of the core is the same. There's, of course, the addition of a certain pitcher who will be joining the staff in one way or another. I'm curious, where is specifically in this first season, because obviously the goal is the World Series. What is the goal for this first 2022 season as the manager of the Mets for Buck Showalter?
I mean, I think that's tough, and I'm not sure if he would even give a specific answer. I know, Steve Cohen's goals are pretty clearly outlined. We know what his goals are, obviously, like he said, 3 to 5 years, when he first joined the team, obviously, as the owner, but even more so now with the moves they've made in the offseason. It's win right now. That is 100% the attitude for this Mets group. I don't know what you expect out of Buck Showalter in his first season, but I think when you go out and you get names like Max Scherzer and you add him to that pitching staff, in addition to Jacob deGrom, and also, of course, Starling Marte is a big piece also for the lineup. I think you really are in a win now situation. I think that winning the division is certainly a start to that win now. I think ultimately it's about winning a World Series. Can that get done this year? I mean, maybe it can, but I don't know if that's going to be the sole expectation going into the season. I do really realistically think, though, and Dylan, I'm curious to get your perspective too as a fan. I think winning the division is certainly a realistic, thought process heading into this season.
Certainly, it was a realistic, idea coming into the trade deadline in those 5 games against the Braves at the end of last July before, things fell apart. And, congratulations to the Atlanta Braves for being able to put things together there and something truly nobody expected. And,
yes.
You and I watched a lot of their games in May and June and went, no, I don't think so. And then they were able to do it.
It's funny because we saw the Dodgers, I'd seen the Dodgers, Giants, other really quality teams playing. You're thinking, these teams might be the World Series champion. We didn't think that way when we were watching the Braves
Not
play,
at all.
But, it turns out it was the case.
We got to see the Padres. We got to see the Blue Jays. A lot of really fun teams. The Braves were not one of our first.
Yes.
Which, and again, credit to them for that was a fun World Series too. While we're talking about it, but as a fan, the pressure remains. That 3-5 that it was encouraging to hear a year ago, all of a sudden has dwindled to 2-4, which does not seem as large, for obvious reasons. But so obviously as a fan the pressure is there, but more than anything it's a matter of trust, as a certain Billy Joel might say. It is a matter of taking that trust in the organization. I think there is a certain real sense of, after a year of not being sure of a new owner and a guy who was totally outside of the baseball world and coming inside here and making things work, but after apparently a rough negotiation with Zach Wheeler's agent is what Twitter will tell you what caused all of this.
Yes.
But it has been quite a fervent off season, and I think a division win is pretty reasonable. It's very tough to get into the NLCS and compete with how good the National League has been over the last few years. I'm looking specifically at the Dodgers, but we'll see what happens from there. Any final thoughts here, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think just with this hire, you have to be so excited for the future of Mets baseball. Obviously on the field, there's tons of excitement, but there's always a little bit of worry as well because it's the New York Mets. And as a fan base, I got a little taste into that. And Dylan, you've had that your whole life, where at times you've gotten your hopes up very high and then you've been let down. And that was the case last season when they led in the division for so long. And then obviously the Braves overtook them. However, I think this is a new kind of era with Buck Showalter at the helm for the New York Mets. And overall, that just makes this team and this season upcoming extremely exciting. A new era brought by Steve Cohen for the New York Mets. The next step, though, we have to end this lockout and see what can happen on the field here for the New York Mets this coming season.
And we will see when that lockout ends. It could be next week. It could be April the 1st.
We might not even start the season on time. So we're talking about next year, and that's the scary part about all this.
There's a lot of worry, but you know what, Sam? It's the holiday season, and I don't want to get anyone too pessimistic coming in.
We have to be optimistic. You cannot be with Buck Showalter.
We absolutely do. And there it is, folks. Buck Showalter, the new manager of the New York Mets. The next step here in the new Steve Cohen era of New York Metropolitan baseball. But that's going to about wrap things up here for this New York Mets off-season beat report. For Sam Davis, I'm Dylan Balsamo, and while the merry bells keep ringing, happy holidays to you.